Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's American Telugu Association's one of the most important topic as a webinar, and we're looking forward for a great information session today. And my name is Madhurima Pachuri. I'll be the moderator today, and I'm so pleased to invite Madhu Bomineni, ATA President, to speak few words about today's event and also ongoing things on the ATA.
Morning, and thank you, Madhurima, and Andarki Namaskaram. Thank you for joining us today's important discussion on domestic violence. It is one of the programs in a series of many educational and empowering webinars ATA is organized related to financial, health, and immigration, and many other topics of importance. ATA also conducts training programs on up-to-date technology to help and compete our current challenging job market, SAT and ACT trainings, and career counseling, and college admission programs for high school students, and also college students, in addition to many community initiatives and volunteer opportunities for these students. So you can also visit our website, ataworld.org, for information on upcoming events and programs. Now, coming to today, the most important topic. October is, you may all know, is a Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Unfortunately, చాలా మంది in our own community or మనకు తెలిసిన వాళ్ళే are experiencing this. It is an important topic to discuss and bring awareness. It affects many, countless lives, often remaining hidden due to monocultural traditions or concerns about family, but the impact is deep and far-reaching. In our culture, the emphasis on our family and traditions can sometimes create silence around these issues. And I hope today's webinar will break that silence by addressing and educating the key aspects of domestic violence, like recognizing the signs of abuse, supporting victims, and providing information about available resources. And then we will also hear from a survivor who will share their story. As an organization, ATA frequently receives calls of assistance, unfortunately, not only for disasters or emergency situations like deaths, but also asking for help for domestic violence. These calls, the frequency is increasing more and more, so with many reaching out for guidance on what to do and where to go. So through ATA Seva and the legal committee, with Madhurima is the chair, we connect with the victims to direct them to the right resources. So today's discussion aims to provide a deeper understanding of domestic violence and explore ways to support and advocate for survivors. It is important to recognize domestic violence is not an individual failure. It is a societal problem that requires our collective action. My heartfelt appreciation goes to our today's panelists that are here: Madhurima Paturi, Dr. Meher Medavaram, Monica Kant, Dr. Radha Pucha, and our behind-the-scenes supporter, our trustee Sharada Singhireddy and Naveen Rapolu. Thank you again for being part of today's program. We hope this discussion provides valuable information and helps you to take the meaningful action in supporting victims and advocating for change. Together, we can make a difference. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madhgaru, for that insightfulness and how excited we to do this topic, and especially for your leadership and passion for this topic, and wanted to continue to help the community and giving back to the community. Well, welcome everyone. Today we are discussing on the domestic violence prevention and resources. That's a topic for today. And my name is Madhurima Paturi. I'm the legal chair for the ATA, and I'm also immigration attorney, been practicing for over 17 years. And that's one of the reason probably I was involved with the ATA and also passionate to this subject where a lot of the immigrants are one of the victims for the domestic violence, especially in the South Asian community who I deal a lot. I think that it's going to be a great conversation and helpful for the community, today's conversation. Without further ado, I want to introduce a few of our speakers here. Um, Start with Monica Kant. Monica, thank you for stepping in at the last minute and filling up the gap. And I think your expertise will very, very well needed today. Well, Monica Kant is the CEO of the Asian Pacific Institute on Gender-Based Violence since March 2021. API GBV is a national resource center for domestic violence, sexual violence, trafficking, and other forms of gender-based violence in Asian American, and Pacific Islander communities. Ms. Kant is responsible for overseeing the management, administration, programs, and strategic plan of the organization and works closely with the staff and board of directors within the APGIP. Ms. Kant is currently serves as a board of directors in other things Georgia Coalition Against Domestic Violence and El Refugio, and is on the advisory board of Raksha, which is also a other sister organization in Atlanta. She is a graduate of Leadership Atlanta class of 2015 and the Regional Leadership Institute in 2018. And she's actively in other things with the Women's Forum Fellowship class, South Asian Bar Association, and she herself is an attorney and she has extensive experience in the immigration and other things. Well, Ms. Kant is also worked with several boards before she got into the um, Asian Pacific Islander organization. And she is from Atlanta and she graduated from Atlanta, and she is also into the Bharatanatyam, which is very interesting. Well, welcome, Monica. And
Thank you so much for having me. I know I'm a last minute addition, but I'm really, grateful to be here to speak with you all today.
have ATA previous board member, board of trustee here, Dr. Meher Madhura, and she is a graduate of Usmania Medical College, and she's board certified family physician fellow of Academy of American Family Physician. She's in private practice for almost 30 years. She also was an assistant director for the residency program. She's a clinical preceptor at the University of Illinois College of Medicine. She's medical staff physician at multiple hospitals in Chicago suburbs. She is passionate about community service. As I said, that she is a past ATA Board of Trustee, and she is the president-elect of the Indian American Medical Association of Chicago, AAFP regional director. Well, welcome, Dr. Meher Garu, and I think your community in general as a community leader is very, very helpful for today's webinar.
Thank you. Thank you, Madhurima, for that introduction. Namaste. Namaste to all the viewers and Telugu ప్రేక్షకులందరికీ నా హృదయపూర్వక నమస్కారం. This webinar has been long coming. It was really something that we need so crucial at this time because domestic violence is increasing, and the main idea behind this is recognizing and identifying, and not only as victim as also but bystanders. If you can change the life even of one person, that makes a huge difference. So this will be more conversational, and we will help you with the process if for anybody, victims or the bystanders. And we'll go over as all the other speakers will start to say and help you with this process. So uh, let's begin with other physicians. And at this point, I would like to actually introduce to you Dr. Radha Pucha. It's my honor to introduce her. She's a good friend of mine. She's also an Osmania medical graduate. She's a board certified internal medicine and board certified hospice and palliative medicine. She worked as a primary care physician, hospitalist, and a hospice and palliative care physician. She worked as a medical director of local nonprofit hospice agency in North Carolina. She loves to volunteer at nonprofit agencies and helps others to reach their goals. For fun, I guess, she loves to do yoga, workout, and walks. What I want to actually point out, she's not only a survivor, but she's not surviving, she's thriving. She's the hope that all of you, I want everyone to see how it is, we can make it definitely a change and doesn't have to be afraid or stay in those relationships or get more physically harmed. So, Dr. Radha Pucha, welcome, and thank you for accepting to be here for this important webinar.
Thank you, Meher. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to join such an important webinar on domestic violence. And when Meher introduced me as a survivor, it never occurred to me up until the last 2 days that I am a survivor, because I don't identify myself as a survivor, because we're all the same. Yes, it is difficult to go through such an experience and have confidence in the most vulnerable times of your life. And with help of friends, parents, you rebuild your life together. And that's exactly what I did. And my parents, and for my siblings and my closest friend, Dr. Sudha and Dr. Late Rao Garu, without their help, I wouldn't be alive today to be participating in this webinar. And thank you again. At this time, I would love to continue in future, help others to reach their goals and help them if they are faced with this domestic violence. Thank you all, team. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Radhagaru, and thank you for all the speakers and panels. I'm going to dig in right into it because it's so important topic. I'm so glad, Radhagaru, you opened the topic saying that the confidence built you, the society helped you, the support you gained towards it. This is exactly what is the need for the webinar today. We as a community leaders, we as a human in general, we need to be compassionate and we need to understand what the others are going or send it to the right resources. If we can gather up the resources by the end of the day today, I think it helps a lot of people out there. So, well, I want to start with Monica. I know you've been in this field for a long time, and I'm going to be asking all the specific questions specific to the South Asian community. I know domestic violence is existing. There's so many resources out there all over the world, in America especially. Why there is a specific need for South Asian community? What is that different? The abuse looks different in the South Asian communities. How we treat, how we look into it, it's so different. Can you explain the situations? What do the community has to look within our within our South Asian region? Like, what is that it looks different?
Thank you so much for that question, Madhurima. So it's a great question to start off with because, while domestic violence exists all over the world, why do we need specific resources for our own community in order to heal, in order to thrive, in order to move forward? And, when you come from a different community, just like Dr. Radha said, she may not even have realized she was a victim until you really unpack what's been been happening in the dynamics. And so in order to work within our community, the answers have to come from our community and the healing has to come from our community, which is why it's really important to develop those resources with community advocates, with those who are familiar with our community, so that we can offer suggestions that make sense. We can offer hope that makes sense. We can understand, maybe traditionally, culturally, family dynamics wise, why violence, takes place. Violence can take place from a very young age. It's where we see it, where we're raised from it, where we then realize that it's nothing different. And then we step into a relationship that also may be violent, and we may not even realize what's happening because of the way we were raised and the way we grew in, those relationships, or you may not even be able to identify it. And that's why, resources just started becoming more culturally specific since the 1980s. In the 1980s, there was this big immigration act that was passed called the Violence Against Women's Act. And our current president, Joe Biden, passed that act. And from that time, he was one of the proponents that led that act. And since that time, resources here in the US, funding, agency support has been spilling into providing more resources for culturally specific communities. And that's why more organizations that have even served the South Asian populations, have developed, and you see South Asian organizations all across the US, but they formed because we all realized that we couldn't go to like a mainstream provider only, like a YMCA or, a provider that, worked with all communities. It was better to heal and prevent and talk about it with, people from our own community, with advocates from our own community, with therapists, with lawyers, any professional, aspect, with doctors who could understand. And that's why, more resources and more attention has been given since the 1980s. And there are a lot of groups out there who have prepared documents and, fact sheets and webinars and, tips on how to help someone if you see someone who is in that situation, or how to even help yourself to maybe even realize if you're in that situation.
Yeah, that definitely changes, especially when you're new to this country as an immigrant, right? And it's a new land, new culture. You already have this culture-centric abuse that either you started back in the country and moved to the America, and all these new things around you made it more stressful, that you have a less independence than what you had in your own country. So I think that definitely the immigration status will also change. So glad you said that it is very important. We need a doctors, we need a community leaders who understands the culture and the abuse very importantly. So this question is to Dr. Mayer. So as a physician, okay, so what do you see in general, or what is your responsibility as a physician if you do see somebody directly or indirectly talked about this? And do you want to tell your experience with the survivors?
Thank you. That's very important. Right now, I mean, when we talk about as a physician, when we are looking at so many different varieties of diseases, this itself is a disease process in a way. So when the patients do come to us, majority of the time, and I'm not making this any gender, this thing, this is across the board, men, women, and now these days we have a lot of same-sex relationships. And so intimate partner violence is very prevalent there also, along with teenage dating and young college adults. So we see patients across the diaspora coming in. They will not come out to say that they have been suffering either abuse, whether it's physical or whether it is emotional or psychological or sexual violence or even financial abuse. There's so many different ways that they can get abused. So they come in with variety of different symptoms. I think anecdotally, I can just say like the cases that I have encountered, like I have a very young person, early 30s, late 20s, and she has been my patient for, as a young child. went to college, became an RN, and became a very, and then was because this is a South Asian, had married, and had her parents actually arranged the marriage, and then afterwards she within within the year of the thing she was going to the hospital. So the warning signs, severe headaches or blood pressure rising, palpitations, and going in, and so we were wondering what's going on, and we go to the every aspect of all kinds of medical diagnosis, but then end up seeing when you sit them down and ask, now we are incorporating that questionnaire in our physical, health history. Is there any violence? They may not come out and say. After second, third, or fourth visit, they will tell us, because there is this fear and a shame and a lack of support and not having financial independence, and then also believing that the abuse is personal and that it's not criminal. So these are the things that we encounter in South Asian. Also, the patriarchal norms and rigid gender roles and normalization of violence. Some that I see that in South Asian, that it's okay, that this can happen. And this is a part and parcel of, having this rigid gender roles and telling them culturally, you need to maintain the unity, you need to maintain the family unit. So we are not saying that, it is recognizing these among the bystanders, among your friends, among this thing, trying to see what you can do to at least have them accept there is an abuse. Acknowledging the abuse is the first step, actually, that this is not a norm. This is something that needs to be addressed. And then after that, maybe trying to see if there is any isolation, is there any changes in their behavior pattern. And when we also see a lot of times unexplained injuries. And then I was told there was another young lady who came in, only 30s, and the norm is like, oh, I always fall down, I'm very clumsy. You go back and look at them and look at those things. It is not, it's something has happened, but they cover up. So acknowledging for the victim itself, acknowledging that there's an abuse. So there are very subtle ways that they can start. It's not like directly. So especially in our communities, I think I just want to point out, there's one slide I want to show how it is that we take it for granted, a lot of stuff, but this is like a warning signs. If someone can put up that slide, I just want to show for 30 seconds how there are various subtle things that can start to intimate partner violence, and it can escalate to that. So if you can put up the slide for me for a minute, I just want to show that. Or I can, that if he's having trouble, I can just say, I think, moving on, I can just, okay, there it is. If you can see that. Is everybody able to see the slide, actually? So we'll just, there are very subtle things so that you can see, is it your partner, or, is they controlling you, or they isolating you from people and activities, telling you not to go and meet your friends, telling you not to go to your family, and say, and blaming you for their problems, or, critically demanding, harassing, and then also humiliating, overly jealous and trying to be very possessive, or threatening, you violence, or making you uncomfortable during intimate relationships, or unrealistic expectations of you, expecting a lot. This has happened during COVID, it got worsened. And if they cannot handle frustration, if that is being taken up on the victim. So, and also saying that you may be crazy, you cannot handle, and controlling. So these are all very subtle. It can start like that and it can escalate and go on. So Madhurima, these are the things that we need to really look forward, not only in the victim, but the bystanders are the ones I will really say, please be on the lookout. This is something that all of us, this is a disease process. It's not just one event. It's a process that needs to be
The cycle.
recognized. Yes, as a cycle, and then, address it.
Yeah, domestic violence itself is a cycle, right? The person who come out and talk about it, by then they might have went through for months, days, years, and sometimes it's the whole life is almost done. It takes a lot for somebody to come out, depend upon what support they have, what resources they have, what education they have, just identifying the abuse itself is hard. As you said, that a lot of people thinks that it's so normal in our culture, it's a part of our culture. So what happens? If they hit it, they will do this, they will say that. What would happen? Just live with that, right? Or what happens to the kids if something can be done for to take care of the domestic violence? This is a very, very normal thing. I think this is a great points you mentioned, Dr. Meher Garu. I think that this is the right time. I want to turn it to the Dr. Radha Garu. So what what helped you to come out of this situation? And what do you think that what was lacking when you're trying to get out, that you could think of there? I wish they had a resources like this. Do you see that change now? Do you think the community move forward in getting those resources, or do you think that there is a suggestible resources that the community leaders are, as organizations, we should know that could help for the survivors in future?
Thank you, Madhurima. This was there were warning signs. There were things away from norm, which other people saw. My friends saw, my parents saw that they were red flags. But I chose either not to see them or to ignore them, or not even see them at all, or think that it was abnormal. My take on that part of the experience would be pay attention to what is away from normal standards of lifestyle or living, which we don't think at that time because we are right in the middle of it. That's number one. Number two is have the confidence in yourself. You have to have that confidence that life is beyond this. Life is much more than a physical abuse or much more than a domestic violence. I have the upper hand in this. I am going to walk away. But not many people are fortunate to have that kind of mental thinking and capacity. I was fortunate because I had the medical degree. So I was able to tell myself, my life does not end here. There has to be a beginning from here to something bigger. So I took the initiative myself and was able to go to my parents' house. By then, my parents were saying, "What took you so long?" So you see when you're in the middle of it, you do not realize you're in the throes of real danger. And the same physical signs of abuse, you go to work, you go somewhere, people started saying to me, "What's all these bruises?" I said, "I walked into a wall." Well, you can't really walk into a wall multiple times, but I did, you see. So that was the excuse I was giving to cover up. So advice would also to be, don't cover up. If something is bothering a woman, please speak up. That is the encouragement I would give. But at that time, I do not know if there were resources in India. I relied on my family and friends. And that was the biggest support I had. Madhurima.
What do you think it's do, do you do you see that there's more resources out here in the United States, or do you
Definitely.
see anybody who are going through the same issue that you able to help them and give the confidence and hope?
Here, I did not come across anybody who was physically abused or in domestic violence. Mainly women especially choose not to tell. And in United States, there are resources, but as Monica was saying, it's the culture we are in for our South Asian community that we are hesitant to speak up and seek help. That is my opinion.
Well,
And if
thank
I
you.
could
Thank you.
add,
Yes, go ahead.
yeah,
Monica.
based on what Dr. Radha was saying, it seems like for you, Dr. Radha, the biggest helpful support you had was from your family and your friends. And that doesn't always happen. You know, it happens less times than it does happen for many survivors that I've worked with. You know, I think hiding it from the family and friends and the shame and the, you know, lack of hope and, you know, disbelief that they're in this situation allows most people not to speak out. And then if you're in a, you know, if you're in a LGBTQ plus relationship, even that causes you not to say anything even more. And so I'm so grateful that you had your family and your parents and your family to help and support you and say, what took you so long to come? Because that's not the usual reaction. And I think that that can make the biggest difference in a community if we're more accepting, you know, not only within the family, but also within the community, if we're more accepting that these situations do happen and it is not the fault of the survivor, that it happens, and how can we as a family and then a larger community move from it? Those are the conversations we need to be open to.
Yep.
I agree,
Well,
Monica.
thank you, Radha. I just want to tell to everybody, the viewers, that you're not alone. There's definitely help out there. And we'll start with the scrolling number down there, 1-800 hotline number. That's there. And if you want specifically to the South Asian organizations, there is, every state has one of them. And ATA has the link in their website too. And most of them also has the language accessibility, which is a great thing. We all know that we have a great culture, and also we have a lot of languages, right? So definitely we all need help with that. Glad we have that accessibility, and I'm so glad there's a lot of South Asian organizations which recognize why it is so important specifically to have that help. Being said that, everyone knows someone who are going through this thing, and this is the truth. Either we're going to accept today or we're going to accept down the road, unless somebody who you love are going through this. Then that day you realize, oh, this is true. It's not just happening to somebody, it is happening within our families, within our friends, right? Before it happens to any of our own people, let's start educating ourselves. The domestic violence, as Monica said, that this is not a survivor's fault. Somebody initiated this, right? The survivor don't want themselves. Somebody did this, whoever that is. Let's have those numbers go down. It can happen to a man, it can happen to women, it can happen to any gender. Okay. Yeah, it happened to have more numbers for the women, but we are also seeing the high rise numbers in the men and other genders as well. Let's take domestic violence as it is. It's a crime. It doesn't matter who did it. And it doesn't come out right away. It's a cycle of it takes days, months, whatever it is. Early prevention is always better. Early signs of abuse, acknowledging the early signs of the abuse is the most important thing. So, Monica, if you can tell few of the early signs, what you saw in the community or experienced in the South Asian in general, if you give a couple of examples, that would be really great.
You know, I think we often think that when, you know, situations are heightened or stressful, that's when domestic violence comes out, but that's not the case. You know, we hear about anger causing domestic violence, but that's not the only thing. I think you feel it more during, you know, situations of anger, but it's also, you can see the signs early on. You can see when a partner tries to exclude, you know, their, you know, victim from you know, seeing friends or family, trying to create a bit of a divide, financial control. It's all about power and control, right? That's where domestic violence stems from. So financial control, you know, looking at the receipts, making sure, you know, certain groceries are bought or not bought, or why did you make a decision without me? You know, control over, immigration status. The way the immigration laws had been set up, you needed the primary, person who brought the spouse over to do the paperwork and be, the leader in the paperwork. But because of the laws that I mentioned, the Violence Against Women's Act, if you can show that you're a survivor and you've been a victim of domestic violence, that actually goes to you. And so, there are ways to not allow immigration be one of those barriers to seeking help as well. And then there's the physical abuse, the mental abuse, which often happens before the physical abuse happens, where the control, you're not a good cook, you're not good at doing this, you're an awful mother, whatever it is to minimize and show control over the relationship is where you'll see it. And often, some folks may not even realize until something physical happens, until a push or a shove or a beating happens. And so then that's when a victim will take more notice of it and realize, okay, this is really bad. I understand that before, they were trying to, control me. They may have been jealous. They didn't like when another man talked to me. You can talk it away and maybe live with the situation, but the physical abuse, and then when it becomes abusive towards children, that's when I've often seen survivors stand up and say, okay, this is not. But I've also seen survivors, get back into the situation, because we've said a few times that it's a cycle. So, many things can happen that causes the red flags or causes the pain or the hurt or the realization that this situation is not, healthy. And then there's the romantic period where I'm so sorry, I won't do this again. The excuses, the apologies, begging that it won't happen again. And so I've seen cycles repeated over and over again with many of the cases that I've helped that, cause someone to maybe be upset and then forgive and then move on. And so all these, situations, I just want to make sure that I say again that it's a power and control dynamic. When, perpetrators, when abusers feel like they're losing control, that's when they'll start, exerting more of the abuses that I mentioned so that they can keep the situation under control again. And if I can just talk about the, anger, because we did talk about anger, it's really important to talk about, how we all get angry, right? We get angry at work, we get angry, at home, we get upset with children sometimes, but how do you control that anger is the most important. And is it being used as a power to control somebody else? We really have to make sure when we're acting it out and expressing it, it's not causing that power and control. And we all have to learn tools to, see why, how we can manage that anger differently, because physical abuse or lashing out at someone else is not the proper way. We all know that. We're talking about it very reasonably right now, but when the, stress and the, heightened emotions are there, it's really important to really figure out what the anger is all about, but we might get angry at our child for coming home late or not listening to a curfew, but do we abuse our child? We don't do that. And so and we're not allowed to do that, nor is it okay. Is it safe or healthy for us to do that? And that is what we have to really make sure that we as a society talk about.
Wow. That is so important, especially learning more about the power and control. That's where the whole dynamic starts. And when exactly that power came into the relationship is very hard to identify, right? That's where you see the what is not normal anymore. What is that it's changing that you're not identifying. It's very important to identify that change and why is it happening, that change. Can we cut that the situation very early in the stage is very, very important. A lot of people out there thinks that, okay, there are the organizations, there are the resources which the domestic violence situations, they're separating the families. That's not what it is. It is not about the separating the families. It's actually helping for the healthy family situation. That's what we need to look at it. So the
Mhm.
people who are listening, the community leaders out there, even if you can't able to help somebody, just try to send it to them to the right resource which you know. That's the reason we all need to know that what are the resources are available. And again, I will direct to the ATA website, and there's a lot of organizations out there in South Asia, the South Asian background that who are helping in these things. Try to understand, try to attend more webinars like this, and see that how can you help others. You don't have to evaluate them. You're not a specialist, but you can send to the direct to the other resources. So being talking all these things nowadays, the abuse is not so physical. Oh, it's a mental abuse. Okay, wow, you are so sensitive, you can't take this. All these things are very, very common. I want to ask you, Dr. Meher, as a physician, how much the mental health is as important as the physical health, and how is the mental health really affects the whole thing?
Extremely important, because I think what Monica just said also, I just want to add few more things there. What are the risk factors? How this, individuals, I think most important that we need to recognize our own, or our own, a family or friends or somebody who gets more affected. I think people with sometimes a lot of a low self-esteem, if you have that, and also people who have seen this abuse, like in a history of abuse actually runs in the families, because that child will see that it becomes a norm what it is. So those are some of the risk factors. And also being economically dependent on other people, that is the biggest thing, because they also fear the fear of getting out of that, being independent becomes there, that becomes a very scary thing for them. So they kind of start, that is one of the risk factors. But actually, what is the relationship, what Monica was saying is the power imbalance. That's the biggest thing to cause. Power imbalance can, one will hold more control on the other, and then the conflicts and the dependency. These are the things. So how do we actually, help and recognize this? And in what role, not only now that you recognize it, once you recognize, how are we going to help them? And what are the steps, and how you can empower people, that for them to acknowledge, telling them to seek help, and also develop like a safety plan for them. Okay. Safety plan is like what Dr. Radha was saying, that she was mentioning to me, that knowing this can happen, be ready for it. And some of them in an extreme situation needs to have something like a go bag, they call that, where they keep their own important documents or important health, their college certificates or their passports and all that, to keep in the safety. And seeking support, actually that is more important. Not only seeking support with your one friend or one family, you need to confide. Just say in an emergency, you're going to call that person. That number you should have. And if you know, as you may not be, somebody, how about, us who will think we're going to help? Same thing, making them acknowledge, being there. Don't be judgmental when they tell you something. Why you should have gone out, you should have done this. No, you're there. You need to be ready when they are ready to come out of that situation, and be supportive when they are ready. At the same time, when you're talking about children, and because it's very, very important, it's easy when the children are not involved. But when the children are there, a mother can never leave. And that is when, if children are getting hurt, is when, the mom will come out, actually try to help. But that also, when you're looking at trying to get when to call for help, and knowing that if you are asking, they're not going to be looking down on you. There's no shame, no guilt. And seeking help with, there's so many agencies now across the board. I'm sure they have a lot in India too. And knowing that, and you just give that number to that friend. What we do in, like, so any of the, like in our offices, I have this, what I showed you, that slide, not only in every room. I leave them in the bathrooms, actually, because that's where, when they go in and they see, and I have the resource numbers there for them to pick up, for them to call. When they feel comfortable, they call and they seek the help. Physical signs, what you're saying, how it's affecting, definitely it affects, because any kind of prolonged stress will lead into increased adrenaline response, increase, whether it is affecting their blood pressure, their heart, and also they're causing obesity and causing diabetes. All these are stress related, because having prolonged stress will increase your, adrenaline response and increase high cortisol. That in turn affects their long-term health. So one time it's fear and the fight, that is different, but long-standing stress is undoubtedly, you see most of these abused women, they gain weight, they get diabetes, they frequently have to go and visit. Even if they don't have physical abuse, I'm even talking about mentally, psychologically, that will, take away their self-esteem and how to function as as a confident individual in society. So they're always looking up and trying to seek help. So has incredible amount of effect on their psychological impact, which can lead to physical impact.
Yep. I'm so glad you all mentioning about the safety planning. Like any other natural disaster, right? The disasters can happen anytime to anybody, anywhere in the world. Same thing, we should all have to have a plan. Not like looking that we're going to have the domestic violence. There are no, it's always important to secure your own documents, to have the emergency backup plan. Something happens to you, who will be taking care of your kids, who will be doing this, who will be doing that, and taking care of your businesses or your health. Everything is very, very important. Planning is very, very important, regardless what will come in the future. And especially, it's so important for the immigrants, right? Again, I'm going back again because a lot of us are all immigrants, and we know how important it is, the documentation. And you come with the status and you lose the status. On the top of the domestic violence, if you're losing the status, that's like a big hurdle. A lot of people don't leave or don't come out of the domestic violence. Mostly it's because of the immigration status. And Monica, I'm sure you agree with me. And in that kind of the situations, if we do want to come, what do we have the resources in the immigration? Like you can talk about the 756V, I guess, T visas, U visas. If we can shower some ideas, and what do we have the immigration benefits for the survivors?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm happy to go over the immigration, forms of options that there are. And before I do that, I just wanted to say, since we did talk about safety planning, I throw a lot of support behind that. That is one of the most important things. And just know that, safety planning can help in so many ways, because when a survivor leaves or decides to leave, that could be one of the most dangerous moments in the whole relationship because of the power and control dynamic where, the loss of control is seen. And that's why the safety planning and having a robust plan on who to tell and who to go to for help and what steps to take next is so important, because that moment can be very dangerous. So I just wanted to just echo what everybody was saying and make sure that I add to that. Now, I had mentioned when I first started speaking that the Violence Against Women's Act that was passed did provide options for, survivors to go ahead and file their own immigration applications. And there are a few of them, but there's, the VAWA self-petition. So if you're married to a US citizen or green card holder, there are ways to make sure that you can file on your own, where you would want someone who is an immigration expert or an immigration lawyer to help you. There are some organizations that do this pro bono. I used to run an organization that did do this for free for survivors. And then there's the U visa, but the U visa requires you to talk to law enforcement and make, a police record, or a police report on what's happening. And that's difficult for a lot of folks in our community because of not wanting to expose what is happening. So to go to the police, it's hard to even tell a friend or a family member, let alone a police officer who may also start deportation proceedings. And so there are options for that, but it's something that we don't automatically quickly go to, because there are other, effects of going, to law enforcement. And then there's the T visa. And then if you're here on, a conditional green card, there's an I-751 waiver. And there's also, if you're here on an H-4, there are also ways to file as well to make sure that you can petition for yourself and get at least a work authorization. We see that many of our, survivors, like you mentioned, because of immigration, are stuck in a domestic violence, situation, even if they realize it. We spent a lot of this webinar talking about how do you realize, you're a survivor, what to do if you do realize you're a survivor, and steps there. But with immigration, it becomes a little bit more complicated because the immigration may be tied to the primary person who happens to be one causing the abuse. And therefore, making sure you speak with an immigration lawyer who should know of this. And if you work with advocates, if you work with an organization, they should be able to, connect you. And there are two national resources that I'd love to, maybe I can put it in chat or maybe we can share. But there's one for the South Asian community called SOAR, SOAR, and it's a collective of organizations nationally that work with, survivors. And Dr. Meher mentioned there's lots of resources, and there are, especially if you're in the bigger cities like Chicago, New York, Atlanta, in California, Texas. But if you're not, let's say you're in North Dakota or you're in Montana and there aren't those resources, there are some national organizations that can at least help and provide the nearest resource for you. My organization, the Asian Pacific Institute on Gender-Based Violence, if you go to our website, we have resources as well for different communities. When we talk about, the Asian Pacific Islander community, South Asians are just one fraction of that. And my organization works with all Asians and Pacific Islanders, the populations. And so while we work with South Asians, it's a fraction, but SOAR is one that only works with South Asians. So I wanted to make sure I get those resources out there. Mother Rima, what's the best way? Should I type it in chat or can we send it through a different way?
Yeah, you can just send it to us. We'll put it up in the website and also send
Okay,
it out
great.
with a link there, definitely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Monica. Especially the immigration touch is very, very important. As I said that repeatedly, that immigration makes a huge difference for the domestic violence survivors, either to stick on with them or leave. A lot of them, I think, a lot of time with my experience between the kids and the immigration makes a huge difference. Either take it or gone, especially in America, right? We're all talking about the resources and what's happening in America currently. We're not talking much about India. I know sometimes there is instance happen where there's a H1B and H4 spouse is there, H1 don't want to support the H4 and the H4 stays back in the country, or do they come here and the different notices comes, they just don't know exactly either should they deal with the Indian law or they have to deal with the American law. I think that's a big topic by itself. We should definitely have a conversation continuously later. But given the time and respect of everybody's time right now, I want to wrap it up this topic, giving each of you a minute, saying that the importance of the topic and what is the takeaway for anyone who is struggling with the situation, or what the resources are available, or what the community leaders like ATA can able to do to make a difference in the domestic violence in South Asian families. Dr. Mayor, past board of trustee, what do you think as a leader for the ATA, and how can we make a change for this?
Thank you. I think my most important thing is I just want everybody to understand and recognize that domestic violence is not only gender, women based, it's across the board, race, religion, anything, it can happen. And recognizing the fact that it is there and knowing that the abuse is not something that their fault. And then trying to, most important right now for me is how do we approach and how do we prevent it? And what is the way that as a not only as a victim but also as a somebody who is being supportive, that is more important. So please, if you find somebody, or if you yourself are a victim, also remember, you never make yourself a plan, or you have to look at all the resources that are available, and there are so many. Another thing, now I just want to mention quickly, that people also get scared if you are in a relationship where you go out on social media or on your this thing trying to look for help. Maybe somebody will come back and trace that. So please go on CDC website. There are help in specifically an intimate partner violence. How, when you go to seek help, or when you're looking at your websites and stuff, you don't need to be worried that how to trace, not wipe out your where you went on the site. So this is very, very important, because I do see this in my practice, when they say they don't want to, they're scared because they're going to be in this relationship for some more time. They don't want any violence happening. So remember, you can seek, but be very careful how you do not confront any abuser or anything. That goes even for the victim and also for someone who's being supportive. Always make sure that when you're ready, only you need to, and even if you do that, always has to be in a public place, always have a third person, and also make sure that you know who to call the authorities, and try to do that. So it is not only we're talking about, we're recognizing, we're knowing, but my important goal as a physician is in this treatment. So how do we avoid it? How do we prevent it? And how to help and treat it? So that's please make a plan. Please talk to other people, and the supportive people. Don't be judgmental. Be there. They will come out when they will come out, and offer the help irrespective of what you do. And please go on CDC website, Center for Disease, on all the website, there are ways how you can seek help in your locality. Like how Monica was saying, you could be in a place where it's a rural place where you don't have, but there resources are there, and look for it, and learn to wipe out your chat history there, so they don't. When I'm talking about extreme violence, don't take this wrong, because this has happened, and I've seen these cases like that. So anything we're always here to help. Please reach out to ATA or any other organizations that you belong to say that there is help always, and there is help to help, and for you to come out of the situation and success and survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mayer. Monica,
Words of
I
hope. Yeah, words of hope. I think, Dr. Meher gave very good advice on if you're in that situation. And for me, the fact that we're even having these conversations is hopeful for me. I've helped, hundreds of survivors, come out of their situation, file immigration document, help them during the hardest time of their lives. And I've done this for 26 years. And for me, to keep doing this work is because I do have hope. And the hope that I have now is with all of you. As a community, we need to have these discussions. We need to talk about, as a community, how we can do differently so that we can, talk about violence in the prevention phase while we still have the children with us, while we still have, families together. We need to talk about how we, can be open about this and raise our children to be the, advocates that we wished we had. It's very important to be in the reactive phase and help survivors when they come to us, but it's also our jobs to make sure it doesn't happen so that we have communities that are healthier, thriving. We know the root causes. We know why this is happening. So let's make it not happen. And I think that's, for me, the hope part of this, because I don't think 26 years ago we would have talked about it. And we are talking about it now. And we have folks like Dr. Radha who's come forward and shared her story. And for that gives me hope. That helps me do this work day in and day out. And whatever we can do together, please reach out, because my organization is here for you and I am here for you.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank
Well,
you.
I want to end with Dr. Radha. You're definitely a celebrity today for us, and celebrity to so many people. You're giving hope to a lot of them, and it all started with the confidence. So I think confidence is the most important factor. Don't give up, keep going, and you are the example for it. What's your words of hope?
My words of hope, Madhurima, are there is life beyond this domestic violence. This too shall stop. Hence, celebrate life with hope. That would be my say.
Thank you so much for coming out and talking about it. I
Thank you.
want you keep talking, go out there and talk more, give hope to more people. And please don't hesitate to reach out for the help and the community leaders and the viewers who are out there. Please don't judge. Try to send them to the right resource. Even if you can't understand, try to find to the right source or send it out to the domestic hotline number, which is scrolling down. I think this is a great conversation. Happened to be in October. October is a domestic violence awareness month. Let's take everybody a moment this month, talk about it, or try to learn somebody who are going through, or if somebody has to go through, how can you help if somebody reaches out to you? I guess the discussion will continue. I guess more need to be educated in this topic. More conversations needs to be happen. Well, thank you to the American Telugu Association for giving the opportunity to all of us, and thank you to the speakers, Dr. Meher, Monica, and Dr. Radha, for opportunity able to share your views and have a conversation. Great topic to discuss on this. Looking forward to talk more of these topics. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Naveen?